Something is running underneath your strongest opinions, underneath your clearest certainties, and underneath the moments you are most sure you are right. I want you to stay with that just for a moment. That slight gap between the conviction and where the conviction actually came from. This video traces a mechanism which I call divide and blind. It maps that gap and it follows the mechanism that produces it. If you sense the gap between what you feel and where it came from, and if you stood inside your own certainty and felt something else running underneath it, this is where that something becomes visible. So this is where we start. Imagine you're on your phone. Your thumb is moving. You're not looking for anything specific. You're moving the way it does when the body wants something the mind hasn't caught up to it yet. Then something stops it, someone on the screen, and they're not reporting, they're not questioning, and they're not hedging. They're only stating what is. And this is what is happening. This is who is doing it. This is why your life feels the way it does. And they are not uncertain about any of it. Your thumb stops scrolling before you've decided to stop it. And something in you, it may be in your chest, it may be in your throat, and it's not thought, not yet, but something faster than thought, a kind of recognition, the body leaning toward the screen before the mind has caught up. Yes, that, someone finally saying it. Your body doesn't tighten in stress, it settles. The way a dislocated thing settles when it finds its place, like something that has been slightly wrong, that has just been corrected. You check the comments. There are hundreds of them. And there are people who felt exactly what you felt. There's the same recognition, that same settling, that same sense that someone finally said what needed saying. The comments are not agreement. They are company. They are the end of a particular kind of loneliness. The loneliness of feeling something strongly and not knowing if anyone else feels it too. And for a moment, it feels like home. Later that day, you're in a conversation with someone who sees it differently. And the feeling that settled in you this morning is now sitting in your body very differently. It is not the warmth of recognition anymore. Something tighter. The breath is shallowing. The jaw sets slightly. The body is preparing before the mind has decided anything. Your tone shifts. And you're not thinking out loud anymore. You're protecting something. Because somewhere between the phone this morning and this conversation this afternoon, the idea passed through a threshold. It stopped being something you believed. It became something that you are, part of how you understand yourself, part of what makes you legible to yourself. And you cannot concede a piece of that without losing a piece of yourself. So the body defends it the way it defends everything that feels like the self, automatically before the reasoning mind has been consulted. The reaction is real. The feeling in your body is real. The anger is real. But the person in front of you is not where this started. They are the face available in the room when the feeling needed somewhere to go. The reaction is real, but the target is wrong, because this certainty didn't begin with this conversation. It was already moving before the clip appeared. It was already looking. It was already searching for somewhere to land. This did not start here. It started in the accumulated weight of feeling that something is wrong and not having anywhere to put that feeling. The father who worked his entire life and watched someone younger with better connections take what may have been his or what should have been his. He never said anything, he carried it. Or the woman who watched her community lose its voice in decisions that shaped everything about how she lived. That anger had nowhere to go. So what does it do? It stayed. The person who sensed the rules of the game were written for someone other than them, but could not point to a specific moment, a specific person, a specific act. It's the slow accumulation. Yes, real losses, real humiliation that never found their proper container. Now, that material doesn't disappear, it operates below the surface, below the level of conscious thought, looking for a direction, looking for a face that fits the weight of what it's carrying. And when that clip appeared this morning, something in the body responded to it, the way a tuning fork responds to its matching frequency. It's not a decision. It's not even a comparison. It's a resonance. The frequency of what was being said matched the frequency of what was already in motion in you. And the body knew it before the mind had formed a single thought. So the clip gave the accumulated feeling a shape it could move in, a face to move toward, a direction. And the relief of that presented itself to consciousness as clarity, as finally seeing, as waking up, but not awakened. The subconscious search presenting itself as insight, the wound finding a face and the mind reading that as truth. And when it found one, the search ended. The feeling that had been in motion reorganized itself around the new certainty. The identity built itself on top of the material. And now releasing the certainty doesn't only mean changing your mind, it means dismantling the structure the self has been standing on. That is why it locks. And it's not stubbornness, it's not stupidity, it's architecture. That is the first layer of divide and blind, the one that runs closest to the skin, not the division between you and the person you are arguing with. That division is real, but it's the surface. The deeper division is interior, between the certainty that arrived in your body this morning and the wound that was already there, waiting for exactly that shape of certainty to pour itself into. You were divided from your origin. You were cut off from the source of what you were feeling at the precise moment you were most certain you could see clearly. Divide and blind begins there. It begins in you before it reaches anywhere else. But let me take you back to this morning before any of that. Imagine it's 6:45 in the morning, your alarm goes off, you don't get up, you reach. Your hand moves before you decided to move it. The body knows what it wants before the waking mind has formed a single thought. And somewhere between the alarm and the phone, a story assembles itself. This is just the news. This is keeping up. This is what responsible people do before their feet hit the floor. 30 minutes later, you put the phone down. You know who is responsible. You know what they're doing and why. You know what most people around you haven't allowed themselves to see yet. The picture is clear. The positions are solid. The anger feels completely justified. Then you stand up. You walk to the kitchen. You put the coffee on or the kettle on, and the body, which has been very quiet through all of that clarity, registers something. And it's not a thought and it's not a position. It's something that predates both. The clarity said, now you can see. The fog has lifted. The confusion has been resolved. There are people responsible and you know who they are. And the picture is finally simple. That is what the clarity said. That is what it felt like from the inside. Then the body, which was never consulted, began its own accounting. It's not always tightness in the chest or in the throat. Sometimes it's a low flatness that arrives when the activation fades. Sometimes it's a vague unsettledness. There's no particular shape. And sometimes it's the specific feeling of having been held without being fed, or of having consumed something that filled the space without offering any nourishment, or a heaviness that isn't grief and it isn't anger. It's a kind of residue. It's the body's way of registering that something significant has happened that the mind's new clarity is not accounting for. The clarity said, now you can see. The body said, something is still unresolved. And I would suggest the body in this case is the more reliable witness. Same pattern, new target. What you are being fed isn't designed to inform you. Sure, information satisfies, and satisfied people move on. What this is designed to do is to keep you activated, keeping you in the loop, keep you returning. Keep your attention locked on people and away from the structures producing your situation. An activated person generates revenue. An informed person generates a decision and leaves. The system needs you activated. It does not need you to be free. The way it keeps you there is precise. It plugs directly into the oldest circuits in your nervous system, the ones that evolved to detect a threat coming over the hill, the ones that ask, friend or foe, or is my group safe? And those circuits fire fast. They bypass the slower, deliberating part of the mind. And once they fire, the thumb stops moving. Outrage fires them. Fear fires them. The sense that your group is under threat fires them every single time. The structural forces shaping your life do not fire them. Because look, a 30-year policy trend has no face. It has no immediate threat signal. The nervous system has no protocol for it, so it disappears into the background. And this is not because you're not intelligent enough to see it, because you're not wired to feel it as danger. And what doesn't feel like danger does not hold the screen. So where does the attention go? It goes toward people, because that's what the nervous system knows how to do. When something is wrong, the mind searches for a person who caused it. It doesn't search for a system, and it doesn't search for a policy. It searches for a person, someone who decided, someone who intended, someone whose face you can see and whose motive you can read. We are wired for that search. It is faster than thought, and the head knows, and the feed knows it. So it supplies the face. It gives your attention exactly what it came looking for, and your attention locks onto it. Why? Because a face you can blame is more immediately satisfying than a structure you can barely perceive. The structure shaping your life has no face. It is decades of accumulated decisions made in rooms you never entered by people whose names you never learned. And it produces its effects slowly and diffusely across timescales the nervous system has no protocol for. It doesn't feel like a threat. It feels like weather. And the weather does not hold the screen, so it disappears and the face stays. The face the feed found for the feeling you were already carrying. Before I go any further, I want to slow this down a little bit because this is the part that most people move past much too quickly. And moving past it is what keeps the mechanism going. Now, the pain underneath all of this is real. Let me show you what it looks like in one life. His name was David, 54 years old, 19 years at the same car manufacturing plant. The Monday after it closed, he sat at the kitchen table, hands flat on the surface, not moving. His daughter stood in the doorway watching him. She had never seen his hands completely still before. They were always doing something. Now they were just resting on the table, flat, still, motionless. And she understood in that moment that something had gone out of him that she didn't know how to bring back. She felt the grief of it. And underneath the grief, something formless, an anger with no direction yet, no face, just sitting there in her body the same way his hands were sitting on the table, waiting. The decisions that closed that plant were made in rooms he never entered by people whose names he never learned. And that happened. Nobody manufactured it. But pain without direction sits there. It's shapeless and it's heavy in a way that doesn't announce itself. There's no clear edge to it, no specific location. It's just present. It sits there the way a fog sits over a landscape. You're living inside it before you understand what produced it. And it has no particular place to go until something recognizes it and finds it wherever it's been sitting in you. And it gives you a face to move toward. When that happens, you feel it land. That's what relief does. It doesn't tell you the truth. It tells you the weight has somewhere to go. And you're right to feel this. This is who's responsible. You're not alone. Real needs, all of them met, all of them redirected. So the pain finds a home, but the home points in the wrong direction. Once it lands there, it stays. Because what comes back when you release the target is harder to carry than what you put down. There's no enemy in it. There's no clear cause. There is no community of people who see what you see. It's the original thing, the loss that never finished, the grief that never found its proper shape, and the question you haven't been ready to ask yet. That is what waits on the other side of releasing the target. And the container, for all of its distortions, at least gives the weight somewhere to go. Look, releasing it means carrying the weight yourself without a direction, without a face, without the relief of knowing who is responsible. That is why most people don't release it. It's not because they lack intelligence. It's not because they haven't seen the mechanism, but it is because the alternative asks more of them than they are currently able to give. The feeling comes back unresolved and undirected. It's yours to carry again. That is the second layer of divide and blind. Real pain, real grief, real losses, but they're all attached to the wrong cause. They're held there not by force, but by the simple economics of pain. If you detach it, it comes flooding back to where it was always waiting. It's unhoused. It's looking for somewhere to live. Feel the difference between being kept busy and losing the capacity to see. These are not the same experience. One exhausts you, the other empties you, and we are not living inside the first one. What we're living inside now is not what your history teacher called divide and rule. That's an old mechanism. Yes, it's familiar and it's almost comfortable in its cynicism. Look, you split a population against itself, you keep them arguing with each other, they don't unite. You stay in power, it's deliberate, it's visible, it's by design. And crucially, the people inside it could still, in principle, turn and see the structure producing their situation. The capacity to perceive is still there, but it's buried under the argument, but it's still present. This is something else, something that took the old operation and added a dimension that changes everything. It doesn't divide you, it restructures what you're capable of seeing. The division becomes the entire perceptual world. You're not kept busy arguing, you lose the instrument you would need to understand what you're arguing about. Divide and rule produces a controlled population. Divide and blind produces a population that can no longer ask the question that would set it free. One keeps you busy, the other takes away the instrument you would need to understand what's happening to you at the precise moment you need it most. You know the feeling when something finally makes sense, and I'm not talking about intellectually, but more in your body, a kind of settling. It's like a weight that has been slightly off center, but it finally finds its balance. The breath drops a little, the shoulders release, something that was held lets go. That feeling, I'm sure you know of it. But here's what I want you to sit with. The same feeling that's identical in the body, in the breath, in the shoulders, it shows up when something that has been waiting in you has just found a surface to attach to. When the wound that has been sitting there has been given a face to move toward. The body cannot tell the difference between the moment you finally see clearly and the moment divide and blind has found what it was looking for. Both feel like relief, both feel like recognition, and both feel like coming home. Now, this is not a flaw in your perception. That's the mechanism working exactly as it should. And what's speaking through that feeling is older than this argument. It's older than this political moment. And it's older than anything this feed produced. It's the part of you that was shaped before you could choose what shape to take. The losses that were never completed, the loyalties that were formed before you understood what loyalty costs, the version of the world you were handed before you were old enough to question whether it was accurate. That is what the mechanism finds. It's not your opinions, it's not your positions. It's the older material, the accumulation that was already in motion long before the clip appeared. And here's what makes this more than a personal story. I invite you to look at the person on the other side of the divide, the one whose certainty feels like the enemy of yours. The same mechanism is running in them. Different objects, different faces, different energies carrying their older material. The structure running through both of you is identical. Yes, the objects change, but the structure never does. And the structure is what divide and blind depends on. Not your specific anger, not their specific certainty. It's the architecture underneath both, waiting to be seen for what it is. Now, think of two people who have been having the same argument for 20 years. The argument has changed its surface many, many times. There are different words, different occasions, different specific grievances. But underneath it, it's the same shape, it's the same choreography. Each of them are so fluent in the other's position that they've stopped listening and started anticipating. They know exactly what the other will say before it's said. They know exactly where it will land, and they're ready. They've always been ready because being ready is safer than being open. Here's what neither of them sees. Underneath the argument, beneath the positions they've defended so many times, they've become part of their identity. There is something that belongs to both of them, a shared loss, an original wound, something that happened before the argument that the argument has been carrying ever since. Neither of them looks at it. And it's not because they're avoiding it, because looking at it would require looking away from each other. And they've been face to face for so long, they've forgotten there's anything else to look at. That is what Divide and Blind produces at a civilisational scale. Two populations face to face, each one so certain of the other's motives that the ground beneath both of them has stopped being visible. The ground is not suppressed and it's not hidden. It's simply outside the frame that the lock itself created. So you're not only disagreeing, you're losing the capacity to see what's shaping both of them. And the more certain you become, the tighter the frame, because now it's not only a position, it's who you are. And who you are does not release easily, because if it does, everything it was holding comes flooding back to the original thing, the one the argument was built on top of. And it's been waiting there the whole time underneath everything. I want to tell you where I found Divide and Blind in myself. There was a period when I had very clear positions, and I had very clear positions about what was wrong, about who wasn't seeing it. I had the frameworks, I had the lineage, I had the evidence that confirmed it, and the clarity felt earned. Until one morning, I noticed something. The certainty felt good in a way that had nothing to do with being right. It felt like relief. And I recognized that feeling. I wasn't seeing clearly, I was putting something down. And what I've been calling a position was a container. I was carrying something I hadn't finished with and giving it a face that wasn't its origin. I find Divide and Blind running in me still, probably more often than I'd like to admit. But the goal here isn't to escape it, it's to develop enough interior ground to notice when it's running and to have the courage to ask what it's carrying. So the question changes, and it's not, are you right? But what is this certainty carrying and where did it come from? Because if you cannot locate that, it will keep happening. It'll be a different issue. There'll be different faces to carry it, but the same charge will be underneath, the same conviction, the same aftermath, and it'll always feel justified. The next time something clicks that cleanly, I would suggest pause. When I say pause, it's not to dismiss what you're feeling, but to locate where it came from. What did you just pick up? What was already in motion before this moment gave it a face? Because until you see the mechanism keeps making the choice for you, you don't receive it, you relocate yourself. That's what Divide and Blind does when you can finally see it clearly. That's what it gives back when you do the work. You're not where you think you are. And from the wrong place, everything looks right. So I'm going to bring this to a close with a couple of questions. The first question is, where is the certainty you are carrying right now that Divide and Blind is running through? And I'm not asking you to abandon it. I'm asking what it's holding that hasn't found a truer home yet. Secondly, when did you first notice that your strongest conviction was also your oldest wound looking for a face? I would love you to bring that into the comments, not as a confession, but to map. If this is the layer you've been looking for, please stay. In the next video, I'm going to take this into relationships where divide and blind runs closer to home and costs much, much more.